This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Thank you so much for stopping by. In this week going into Thanksgiving, you know what? It's time to stuff the turkey. Oh, yes. Those poor babies. Ooh, I had to cover turkey farms at Thanksgiving once. They all run around. It's like somebody told them, we're coming for you. We're coming to get you. But they're so good. Let's be thankful, shall we? Rob Barrett's my faithful engineer playing our gobbles for us. They're real turkeys in there, aren't they? Oh, my gosh. There's a mess. All right, let's be thankful. It's about Thanksgiving for who we are, what we have, and most important, the strength and wherewithal to handle some of the cards life deals us. And we've got some stories for you here tonight, I'll tell you that. Let's go to East Tennessee, where Judy Rababa sat down to write about some of the difficult issues that she was dealing with. No sooner did she lose her parents, did she find out she was losing her sight, her vision. And it inspired her to write, Walk by Faith, Not by Sight. So, Judy, you basically started writing for therapy.
Yes. I guess that's what you would call it. I just wanted to get everything down so that I could remember it at a later date.
And it became a book.
3.5 years later.
Well, that's not bad. Some people have waited even longer, believe it or not.
Yes, I believe it.
Walk by faith, not by sight. Is that in reference to you losing your eyesight?
Yes, probably a process of over 10 years. I gradually lost sight. And during the time, I learned to put my faith in God. And through faith, I've gotten to where I am today.
And where are you today?
I am my own person. I'm independent, and I'm completely happy with my life. I don't even think about my vision loss anymore. It's just part of who I am.
How do you deal with that?
At first, it was hard. I had my pity party for about a week, and then I just told myself, you can't live like this. And I decided then and there I was going to live life as full as I could live it, and I have ever since. I'm hoping that's what people will get from the book, that as long as you have faith and determination, you can get through anything. You can't just sit down and give up.
Are you able to get around? Are you able to do things?
Yes, I do everything I previously did except for drive. I do my own house cleaning, my own cooking. I sew.
How do you sew?
Well, I just visualize it the way I used to do it, and I'm able to see this in my mind. And I made a quilt for my granddaughter for Christmas year before last. I alter my clothes. I'm laid off right now, but I previously worked in a sewing factory that makes helmet covers for the military. And hopefully they'll be calling some of us back to work soon.
And you'll be able to work?
Yes.
That's amazing. Well, how did you find Paige?
I saw the commercials on TV, and I struggled with it for a long time. I thought, well, my book's not good enough. But I sent it in, and they called me a week later, and they wanted to publish. So I thought about it, and I was laid off at the time and didn't really have the funds. But it was like God said to me, you wrote a book about faith. Now put your faith in the book and put your money where your mouth is and do it. And I did.
Man, if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. Judy tells me her daughter's been helping her get her book out there, and she's doing book signings, and she's looking forward to an interview on her local news station. So there you go. Our next author, Dan Wheeler, is a Presbyterian minister, and when he graduated from high school, his creative writing teacher wrote in his yearbook that he would one day write a great American novel, and the teacher would read it. Well, he's written Lessons from the Pucker Brush. Lessons from the Pucker Brush. Dan, what's Pucker Brush?
Well, it comes from Maine. When I was up in Maine, and I worked in the Boy Scout camp for a while I was going to seminary. And what I learned was that when you would to the deep brush. There was often prickles on it or critters inside, and they would, get you, and it would hurt, and you'd pucker up your lips. So they called it pucker brush. So,
Did it make you pucker, Dan?
oh yeah, more than once. Especially when you're running after trying to train people to be in the woods and that sort of thing. It was an interesting time up there.
So I guess you learned some lessons in the pucker brush, right? Hence the name of your book.
Yeah. Well, when the lessons that we learn aren't always, oh, gee, now I can do this and this and this, but it's kind of, things that, well, like the first story I tell in the book is of my mother and how she tried to find a place for us to live and couldn't. Every place she went, she was carrying me in her arms. They said, well, you seem like a nice lady, but we've made a policy that we're not going to rent to anybody with children. And so this kept going on and on and on until finally my mother got so exasperated with it. The next place she went, after they had interviewed for a while, they said, you seem like a really nice lady, and your baby is quiet, but we have decided that we're not going to rent to anybody that has children. And my mother very quietly looked up at them and said, well, if you'll hold the apartment for me, I'll go down to the river and drown him, and I'll be right back.
Oh, my God.
Needless to say, they rented her the apartment. And, what that brought to me was, why is it that we always have to make assumptions about people? Landlords make assumptions about tenants and tenants about landlords. And, what if we just try to get to know each other a little bit rather before we start making judgments on them?
Gee, that's something that's been going on since the beginning of time.
Absolutely. And we still haven't learned. So,
yeah. It's funny you should say that, because I go out on the street and I have to interview people. And, if sometimes I don't even look, I just, I need sound, I need it quick. And I just run up to people and go, hi, I have a question for you. Can you answer this question for me? If I take too much time, I find myself going, oh, that guy's not going to want to talk to me, or she's not going to want to talk to me. Nah, that doesn't look like. And it's always the people that I think won't talk to me, or that I think won't have something interesting to say, that always, time and time again, have the best quote, the best comment, the most interesting. It happens all the time.
Yeah, it's those kinds of life experiences. And I had experiences, when I was growing up, and when I was in the woods, and when I was in the submarine service, and then I was an Air Force chaplain and a hospital chaplain, and all of those were places where you learn something by being with people. And, it's quite amazing to me. It's just like what you were saying. Gosh, you make assumptions about somebody and you think, well, what do they need? Well, they're old or this or that or something else. You make assumptions about them, and then you really miss wonderful opportunities to get to know people and to know more about them. The reason I wrote it to begin with was to share the things I've seen along the way. Somebody once described the Christian faith as one beggar showing another beggar where to find food, or where they found food. And, that's really, I'm a beggar. What can I tell you? And when you find something that you think will help somebody else, do it.
Dan, you really do have some thought-provoking stories to share. They're the kind of stories that will hopefully inspire us to look at our own lives and be very thankful. Yeah. Great message as we head into the holiday season. All right, next up, we have Paul Grauer. He's read tons and tons of self-help books and discovered one thing, and it inspired his book, Soul Success, Creating a Balanced Lifestyle. All right, what was that one thing, John?
They don't ever tell you how to get started. They only tell you how to start in the middle. And so what I've done is I've laid that that concept out. You have to have a balanced lifestyle before you can actually choose your lifetime achievements or the goals that you want to achieve. And so through mind, body, and soul, and having a balance between the three, you can achieve those goals much quicker and have a much better life instead of just having a one-sided life, such as, great financial success or great, physical health success. You can add all three of those together and you can have great success throughout.
Okay, so where do I start?
You start by buying my book so you can find out how to do it.
I figured that would be like the first step, right? Buy your
Yes.
book. Okay.
And then once you've gone through my book, it's going to take you step by step on the different aspects of how to use your nutrition, use your exercise in mind, body, and soul, and how physical health can also affect mental and can also affect spiritual health. And so by putting those three together and eating the right way during the day and taking the right kind of supplements and also doing the right kind of exercises in the mind, body, and soul, you start to develop an understanding of what your body needs, what your mind needs, and what your soul needs, so that you can build out a stronger base that you can actually start to develop goals and start to develop your desires and your wants in life.
I have to ask you, what kind of a background do you have?
I've done a lot of different things in my life. I like to experience everything I possibly can. I've worked in the telephone industry, in government and politics. I've also worked in the security industry as a contractor. But what my main focus in all of those things were to experience and try to figure out where I fit in the world. I would either do real well financially in that particular area, or I would do real well physically in that area, but I could never have a feeling of completeness until I started looking at how to do that and how to become more successful. So I started, doing that research, and over the course of 15 to 20 years, I've discovered that it's more than just one thing in your life that makes the difference. It's multiple things, and it's multiple ways of expressing them.
I mean, my only concern for you is that there's a lot of people with PhDs and masters out there writing on similar subjects, so you're really going to have to stand out, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the difference is, as PhDs and I have a master's in business, the problem comes in, the more and more education we get in a lot of respects, the more and more narrow we look at something. You take these PhDs and they're looking just at one specific thing, a chemical, a protein that produces this response or this reaction or improves health or improves mental capacity. They never look at the full picture in a lot of cases. We got to take action. We just can't learn. We actually have to put that knowledge to use.
Okay, John, talk about balance. We were talking about dieting, right? Perfect subject as we head into the holidays. We're going to be faced with fattening food and drink and, oh my gosh, fear of weight gain. Fear of weight gain. Well, here's something to think about. If you know your company party is coming up, eat really healthy in the days before the party and then the day of the party. Do not go hungry, Rob. Do not go eat something before you go to the party, and you will be less tempted. And if you are tempted, eat it, please. I can't stand people around the holidays. Oh, I can't have a cookie. Oh, I can't have another drink. If you're not having it around the holidays, when are you having it? And then you're walking around miserable because you can't have it. If you want it, you should have it. You'll feel better, trust me. And then get to the gym the next day and then start eating healthy again, right? Please don't be one of those people. Please. It's so annoying. And the more you crave, the better your chances you are going to fall off the wagon and you're going to eat stuff that you really shouldn't have eaten in the first place. So there you have it. We have to take a break, Mr. Clock tells me. Mr. Clock tells me and Mr. Music tells me. I am really crazy, right? Mr. Clock and Mr. Music. Where did that come from? I don't know. Rob's holding it up on the cards. You are listening to the Page Publishing Book Club. And you are thankful for that, aren't you? We're going to come back in just a few minutes. Do not go anywhere.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. We are heading into Thanksgiving. Can you believe it? This year has gone so fast. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Our next author is Polly Libsohn, and she is right here from the New York City area. And she turned out to be a sort of a dream weaver for her mom. She wrote Immortal Kisses. Great title, Polly.
Oh, thank you so much.
Confessions of a Poet.
Yes, absolutely gorgeous. I'm telling you, it's going to just take your breath away. It's very different, romantic poetry. It's easy to read. You don't find poetry like this anymore. It's gorgeous. It's eloquent. It tells a story, and it's very emotional. And my frustration is that when people hear poetry, they turn their noses up, you know? They think, oh, my goodness, poetry. But this is so gorgeous. It's very near and dear to the heart. And I've gotten rave reviews about it already.
That's why it's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. People can't get over it. They're struck by the cover. They're struck by the themes. You should actually read one of the poems.
Well, why don't you, can you give me something real quick?
Sure. First, let me just tell you that this book took 35 years to write.
What?
Yes.
Why?
Because my mother wrote it. I was at C.W. Post College. This was back in 1971. And I came home and I announced that I had a poem to write. Could she critique it? So I wrote the poem. I read it to her. I went to class and I handed it in. A day later, I came home and she had written a poem. All because I gave her the insight and the thought, because I had to write this poem for my creative writing class. And it was because of that she started writing these poems. And then I would come home and she would sit me down at the kitchen table and she would say to me, listen to this poem. What do you think? And she'd read me the poems and I'd be swept away. And this continued from 1971 until the year 2000, 2004. And I kept saying to her that we have to publish these poems. But then because we were an unknown, nobody wanted us. And especially because it was poetry. So then my mother passed away, and I said to myself, I've got to fulfill her dream. Then in 2011, I took out all her poems that we'd worked on, and it took me 4 years to do this, and I did it. And that's it.
So you're making your mother's dreams come true right now.
Yes, yes. I'll
it.
read you a poem. This one, Where Have the Wild Geese Gone? Where have the wild geese gone, whose cries broke the silence and filled the stillness of the night, when once you held me in your arms and we listened? Where is the moon that floated through window panes, crossed and recrossed thresholds, and gave new meaning to the mysterious night as you lay beside me? And oh, my love, where is the unforgiving wind that whistled and sang through eaves, blowing away with its songs and settling its chill on the passion that lay in the last kiss? And
how are you getting people to read this book?
I don't know how, because when people hear poetry, they right away close their minds to it, you know?
But you did say you had some luck when you went back to your college.
Well, I went back to my college, C.W. Post, and they were so excited to see me. They were so thrilled. They could not get over that I had created the book that my mother had written. They thought it was just fabulous. And they're going to write an article about me in their newspaper. They were thinking about doing a book signing for me, and also they wanted me to address some English classes. And I was so excited, and I'm just so thrilled at the thought of doing something like this.
You know what, Polly? It's a good place to start. I know poetry in particular, I don't know what the problem is, but it really is a tough sell. It's harder, I think, than any other literary work out there is selling poetry. But you have such a great backstory, and your mom, you're making her dreams come true, and if you're getting to talk to some writing students, and your story alone is going to inspire them. So just go with the thing at your college and talking to the students, and I think something will definitely happen from there. All right, our next author, Dottie Boynton, wrote a children's book. It's called Pippi Puppy and Frida Fox, but this is a children's book with a powerful message.
Well, it's about two beautiful animals that started out equally, but it shows how, where each have a different background, it shows how their lives are definitely different from each other, which caused problems, and it creates an understanding between the two of them. And I think that it was an important message to share with younger children to help solve some of the problems that are happening in today's school, such with the bullying. And I think it's a compassionate way to look at bullying, and it is basically written to help out both ends of the spectrum. And, my hope is to try to make a difference and make a change in some of these young children. And I think if the mindset is changed early on, it really could make a difference.
Why were you drawn to this?
Well, understanding that there's a lot going on in the media. There were people in my own neighborhood who were dealing with those problems, and they were having trouble guiding their children through these issues. And I thought, well, if I write this story, it will help guide these children and their parents through these playground issues that happen every day in school with children. And it will help the adults. It's sort of like a little bit of a opportunity to also give the adults a little bit of understanding on how they might want to counsel their children.
Do you have kids, Dottie?
I do. I have two children. They're adults. I was inspired by this particular writing and using animals due to the fact that I used to read my own children Beatrix Potter stories, and I loved how she would teach lessons in her stories using little animals, and so that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I have a second book coming out, and I do also have another lesson in that. So my stories have a nice story, but also a lesson.
It sounds like a great book to have in the classroom.
Well, that's my hope, that it will be in the classrooms, that it will be in the libraries. I just really feel passionate about trying to help these parents and how to help the child deal with these issues. I had a major article written about me in the community that I live in, and that did get a lot of exposure for me. And I have had some of people that I know say that now I'm famous, and I get a kick out of that.
What made you go with Page?
Of course, this is my first story, so I was new, and I noticed Page Publishing, and the thing that I liked the most about Page Publishing was that they don't choose every story, and I did want someone to be particular. I wouldn't want them to choose my story just because I've submitted it. I wanted them to be particular about what they chose, and that was my main reason. And also they offered all of the other services, such as the editing and the illustrations, and they did a lot of that as well, and they've been fantastic. They have helped me through this whole process, which was completely new to me.
And now you're on to your next book already. Pretty good, Dottie, right? You should pat yourself on the back for that. All right, I think we have time for one more author. We are going to go to Dean Burnett. He is a minister out in Michigan, and one day he was wondering, how do wishes come true? And the next thing you know, he was writing The Script Lady and the Actor. Now, how would you describe this book, Dean?
It's a romantic comedy, a fairy tale gone as wrong possible as could be. There's a script lady. She had been working on a crime show, and she was wanting a change of pace, so she makes a wish, and all of a sudden she's working on a sitcom. There's a person who graduated from a Kentucky acting school, which also gave out degrees for hog farmers. And he wants to be on a successful show, and all of a sudden he gets an audition for a sitcom, which happens to be the same one that she gets the opportunity for. Well, he gets the starring role. They meet, and they start to like each other, and they make a wish for the other person to fall in love with them. That's where we find out how wishes are fulfilled. There's a whole company, Fairy Godpersons, Inc., that is dedicated to sending fairy godmothers, fairy godfathers out to fulfill our wishes. And the story is how a badly written assignment card led the fairy godfather, or enchanted godfather, as he likes to call himself. He doesn't think that a man should be called fairy anything. The enchanted godfather ends up thinking that the actor's married co-star is the one he wants to fall in love with him. And so it's a romantic comedy with a whole bunch of blunders, and you begin to wonder, is it all going to get resolved by the end? And while all this is going on, back at Fairy Godpersons, Inc., they're running into their own dilemma because of staff shortages, and they're switching from handwriting to computers. So they have to train everybody up there, and it's a mess.
This sounds like so much fun. I want that fairy godfather. I don't care what you call him. I would like him to grant my wish. Yeah, I'd like these people to be real.
Yes.
How did you conceive of this?
Well, I was driving, and my radio wasn't working, and so my very active imagination got busy. It was nighttime, and I saw the first star come out, and I went through the, starlight, star bright. I wished upon the first star sheet tonight, and then I got to thinking, I wonder how wishes get fulfilled, and the whole story began unfolding from there.
That story's almost as good as the story that you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always have a wish to become a writer?
From a very young age, I wanted to be a writer. I've always had a very active imagination. I've written a lot over the years. In fact, I've got 6 novels that I've written. It's hard to get published without an agent, and when I came across Page Publishing, I found out that I could publish without an agent. I have also found out that being a writer is not a special thing as what I thought it was, and so a lot of people aren't as interested. I've talked to some newspapers and some radio stations trying to promote it, and they're like, well, everybody writes books nowadays.
So, but you're a local guy.
Exactly, and I tried to push that, and they're like, well, we'll get to you if we need to fill a place in the paper.
Well, don't give up. I mean...
I'm not giving up. I'm working on a trilogy of novels right now. I'm almost finished with the second of the trilogy, so I'm not giving up on writing.
Hey, it sounds like Paige made Dean's dream of becoming an author come true, and I don't get it. So what? Everybody writes books today. I think that's kind of lame. What's wrong with people? Ask anyone who says that, Dean, ask them, you try writing a book. You get through the process. It's like giving birth. That's the only thing I can compare it to. It's like giving birth. It's like labor. And like labor, it's easier for some women than others, but still, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of fortitude to write a book. And all I can say, Dean, is you got to keep plugging. Do not give up. I believe. And I believe we're out of time. You got to come back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club right here on 710 WOR. I'm your host, Atlas Stockton Rossini, along with one of the men I am most thankful for in my life, Rob Barretts, my trusty, patient, and talented engineer. Thank you so much. Have a great Thanksgiving.